F1 news. Bahrain testing is just around the corner, but before we even get there, the SF25 has already been put through its paces in Fiorano. And guess what? The lap times are already causing a stir. Reports suggest that LECLERC was significantly quicker than Hamilton during their respective runs. And of course, the internet is already buzzing with speculation. Could this be an early indicator that LECLERC is just naturally better suited to this car? Or is this just Ferrari running different programs for their drivers, making these lap times essentially meaningless? Well, as always, let's break it down because this one is getting spicy. Ferrari is always the most hyped, overanalyzed, and scrutinized team in F1 history, and this year it's even more extreme. They've just paired a 7-time world champion with their golden boy, a driver who has stuck with them through thick and thin since 2019. With a duo like that, they're not here to make up the numbers. They want total domination. And that's why every tiny detail of this Fiorano shakedown is already being dissected like a championship decider. Both Leclerc and Hamilton got their first proper run in the SF25, each covering 100 kilometers. From early reports, the car is a massive step forward. Ferrari has worked hard to exorcise the demons of the SF24, fixing the flaws that made their 2024 campaign an uphill battle. The braking stability, corner exits, and overall handling are said to be much improved, making this car far more suited to an aggressive driving style. But as always with Ferrari, getting here was not smooth sailing. 4 months, Ferrari engineers have been sweating over tyre management, a massive weak point for them in 2024. Keeping the car within the optimal performance window was a nightmare. So they basically went into full mad scientist mode for the SF25's redesign. Team boss Fred Vasseur wasn't kidding when he claimed 99% of the car was new. This thing is almost unrecognizable from last year's machine. The SF25 features a completely reworked pull-rod front suspension, a redesigned chassis, and an upgraded cooling system. Essentially, Ferrari has wiped the slate clean for 2025, and this might just be their best shot at finally taking the fight to Red Bull and McLaren. Now, back to those lap times. After completing his 100 kilometers run, Leclerc was all smiles, saying, "We'll find out on track if this is the best car, but it's definitely much better than the SF24. But the bigger takeaway? He was reportedly 0.8 seconds faster than Hamilton during his stint. And let's be honest, whenever you hear Leclerc was faster than Hamilton, you know the F1 world is going to lose its mind. So what does this actually mean? Is Hamilton struggling? Should Ferrari be worried? Or is this just classic pre-season overreaction? According to Ferrari insiders, this is not a big deal. The two drivers were on different run plans, focusing on completely separate aspects of the car. Leclerc, being the homegrown Ferrari driver, was given more freedom to push, working on extracting performance. Hamilton, on the other hand, was still in the learning phase, focusing on refining his feedback and making small adjustments to the setup. Ferrari has also confirmed that Hamilton's steering wheel wasn't even finalized yet. He was still tweaking button placements and cockpit settings. So realistically, expecting him to match Leclerc's pace straight away would have been a stretch. But let's be real, this is Formula One. People are already questioning whether Hamilton can handle the raw one-lap pace of Leclerc in this Ferrari, and the debate is only going to get louder if this trend continues into pre-season testing. Nobody expected Hamilton to jump into the SF25 and immediately start setting lap records. This is a guy who spent over a decade driving Mercedes machinery, developing an almost symbiotic relationship with how those cars behaved. Now, he's dealing with a completely different philosophy, from the braking system to the way power is delivered. Hamilton himself has admitted that Ferrari's power unit behaves totally differently from what he had at Mercedes. He described it as something I have to relearn, which tells you just how much of an adjustment period he's facing. If Hamilton wants to fight for the championship this year, he has to close that gap fast. Some people are saying he'll need 6 months to get fully comfortable in the Ferrari, but let's be real, he doesn't have 6 months. If he's still playing catch-up by race 5, Ferrari will have no choice but to start backing Leclerc as their lead driver. So Bahrain testing is crucial for Hamilton. If he doesn't show strong pace right out of the gate, the Ferrari hierarchy could start shifting in Leclerc's favor. Ferrari isn't just betting everything on their initial launch package. Reports suggest that they have a huge early season upgrade in the works, possibly their most important of the entire year. 2025 is going to be an all-out development war. Every team will be bringing major upgrades, and if Ferrari doesn't keep up, all of this pre-season optimism will mean nothing. McLaren is pushing hard. Red Bull is still dangerous. Mercedes is a wild card. And if Ferrari wants to fight for both titles, they need to nail every upgrade, every strategy call, and every team decision. Let's say Ferrari actually does have a car capable of fighting for the title. What happens next? Do they let Hamilton and Leclerc fight it out freely? Or do they start favoring one driver over the other? History tells us that Ferrari always ends up backing one driver when the title fight gets serious. They did it with Schumacher. They did it with Alonso. They did it with Vettel. And if Leclerc starts pulling ahead early in the season, they will back him over Hamilton. For Hamilton, that means he cannot afford a slow start. If he's even slightly behind Leclerc by mid-season, Ferrari's natural instinct will be to prioritize the guy who's been with them for years. Bahrain testing isn't just about performance, it's about establishing authority within the team. Because if Hamilton doesn't prove himself early, this dream Ferrari move could turn into a nightmare. The official pre-season tests in Bahrain are just days away, and that's when we'll get our first proper read on how the SF25 stacks up against the competition. If the pace is real, Ferrari could be looking at their best championship shot in over a decade. If the lap times from Fiorano turn out to be misleading, then it's going to be a long season of excuses and heartbreak. The SF25 is out, Hamilton and Leclerc have had their first taste of it, and the F1 world is already in full conspiracy mode. Is Ferrari finally back? Has Lewis Hamilton bitten off more than he can chew? Will Leclerc play the good teammate role? Or are we about to witness a civil war in Maranello that would make Game of Thrones look like a friendly dispute over a parking spot? Let's start with the obvious. Ferrari has every reason to believe this is their best chance in years to finally win a damn championship. They've completely revamped the SF25, and even though 99% of the car is new, they still found a way to paint it the same shade of red they've been using since Enzo Ferrari had a full head of hair. But hey, that's the tradition. The early signs are promising, unless, of course, you're someone who wants to start panicking over lap times. Reports claim that Charles Leclerc was 0.8 seconds faster than Hamilton in Fiorano, and some people are already acting like Lewis should pack his bags and book a one-way ticket back to Stevenage. Let's take a deep breath. First of all, comparing lap times in Fiorano is like comparing a fine Italian wine to a bottle of Tesco's discount lager. It doesn't tell you the full story. The track is Ferrari's backyard. Leclerc practically grew up driving around it blindfolded, and most importantly, both drivers were on completely different programs. Charles was probably out there pretending it was Q3 in Monaco, while Hamilton was still trying to figure out if Ferrari put the doctor's button in a different place just to mess with him. And let's be honest, of course Leclerc is going to try to assert his dominance early on. The guy has been Ferrari's golden boy for years, and now he suddenly has a 7-time world champion breathing down his neck. You know he's trying to send a message, but don't let that fool you into thinking Hamilton's lost his touch. If we've learned anything over the years, it's that doubting Hamilton only makes him stronger. It's like telling an Italian grandmother you don't like her cooking. You're just going to make her more determined to prove you wrong. Now, let's talk about the real issue Ferrari might face this season, keeping these two egos from colliding harder than a Red Bull strategist under pressure. We all know Ferrari has a history of team politics that makes the Roman Senate look like a chill book club. The question is, when push comes to shove, will Ferrari actually let Hamilton and Leclerc fight freely? Or will we see team orders being thrown around faster than a dodgy Mercedes strategy call? History isn't exactly on Hamilton's side here. Ferrari has always had a thing for picking a number one driver. They did it with Schumacher. They did it with Alonso. They tried to do it with Vettel, before Leclerc made him look like he was driving an Uber. If Leclerc starts the season strong, the temptation to back him will be enormous. And let's face it, Ferrari loves a homegrown hero. For Hamilton, this means one thing: he cannot afford a slow start. If he spends too much time getting comfortable in the Ferrari, Leclerc will have already built a points lead, secured the support of the entire team, and convinced the Tifosi that Hamilton is just there to hold his water bottle. But let's assume for a second that Ferrari actually does have the fastest car this season. Yes, I know, wild concept. If they do, It's not just a question of can they win, it's how they win. Do they let their drivers go all out like Senna versus Prost? Or do they risk another Fernando Alonso 2010 Abu Dhabi strategy disaster and micromanage themselves into oblivion? And let's not forget the other teams. Red Bull might not look as terrifying as before, but anyone who counts out Max Verstappen this early is just begging to look like a fool. McLaren, on the other hand, is looking more dangerous than ever. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri have been quietly sharpening their knives, waiting for their chance to strike. And then there's Mercedes. Well, let's just say their current approach seems to be hope and pray something magically fixes itself. The Bahrain test will be massive. This is where we'll finally see if Ferrari's hype train is real or just another case of pre-season delusion. If Hamilton suddenly finds pace and goes toe-to-toe with Leclerc, then we've got a real title fight on our hands. If he struggles, though, well, let's just say Netflix is salivating at the potential drive to survive drama that could unfold. Bottom line, 2025 is shaping up to be absolute chaos, and I am so here for it. Ferrari could finally reclaim their throne, or they could self-destruct in the most spectacular way possible. Either way, it's going to be one hell of a ride. And just like that, we are entering what might be the most explosive season of Formula One in recent memory. Ferrari is rolling into 2025 like a mafia boss walking into a negotiation, suited up, confident, and with just the right amount of arrogance to make you think they might actually pull this off. But here's the thing, history hasn't exactly been kind to the Scuderia. Every time we think they've got their act together, they find a way to Ferrari themselves into oblivion. So, what's different this time? Why are fans, analysts, and even rival teams giving them the slightest benefit of the doubt? Simple, because this time, it feels real. The SF25 isn't just a minor tweak from last year's car, it's a complete overhaul, a reinvention, a borderline Frankenstein experiment where Ferrari took all the weaknesses of the SF24, threw them in the bin, and said, right, let's actually build something championship-worthy for once. And let's talk about that lineup again, because, honestly, it's one of the biggest talking points of the entire season. Hamilton versus Leclerc. The seven-time champion, battle-hardened, and coming in with zero intentions of playing second fiddle, versus Ferrari's golden boy, the man who has spent the last 5 years carrying the team through sheer talent and emotional trauma. This isn't just a teammate rivalry, this is an ideological battle. The legend versus the prodigy. The master versus the apprentice. Obi-Wan versus Anakin with better haircuts. But here's the problem. Ferrari might be playing a game they cannot win. On one hand, they can't afford to clip Hamilton's wings too early. If they do, he'll turn that garage into a war zone before you can say multi-21, Seb. On the other hand, if they start favoring Hamilton, Leclerc and his Tifosi army will riot so hard that Ferrari HQ might need to relocate to another country. The real drama will come when they inevitably have to make a choice. Because let's face it, at some point this season, Ferrari will have to pick a number one driver. Will they do it after a few races? Mid-season? Will they let it go down to the wire, knowing full well that their worst nightmare is a repeat of Senna versus Prost-level chaos? And that's assuming Ferrari is actually in the title fight. That's the thing about F1. No matter how much you upgrade, how much you simulate, how much your drivers believe in the car, none of it means a damn thing until the first real race weekend. Maybe Ferrari nailed it. Maybe they built a machine that will actually take the fight to Red Bull and McLaren. Or maybe, just maybe, we're about to witness another season of Ferrari being Ferrari, where they start strong, win a few races, get everyone's hopes up, and then proceed to implode in ways we cannot even begin to imagine. Let's not forget the other players in this season's Game of Thrones. Red Bull might not be looking as invincible as before, but let's not be stupid. They still have Max Verstappen, and he could probably win races in a shopping cart at this point. McLaren, meanwhile, has been steadily creeping up, and with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri showing no signs of playing nice, they're more than ready to ruin Ferrari's party. And then there's Mercedes, who, well, might as well be trying to turn water into wine with the mess they're dealing with. The biggest wild card? Development wars. The car Ferrari has now isn't the car they'll have in 6 months. Every team is playing a game of constant upgrades, and Ferrari cannot afford to fall behind. We've seen it before. Teams start the season looking like world beaters, only to realize by mid-season that they've been outdeveloped into irrelevance. If Ferrari really wants this title, they need to be relentless, aggressive, and ruthless with their in-season updates. So, where does that leave us? Right on the edge of what could be an all-time great season. Either Ferrari actually gets its act together, fights for the title, and gives us the battle we've all been waiting for, or they Ferrari themselves into the dirt, and we get another year of watching them trip over their own shoelaces while Red Bull and McLaren run away with it. Either way, this is must-watch Formula One. So, what do you think? Is Ferrari finally about to end the drought and reclaim their throne? Will Hamilton prove why he's still one of the greatest? Or will Leclerc shut him down before he even gets a chance?